I'm just a podcaster who blogs, soon to be published author. I am the fiery redhead from the podcast Wide Open Spaces with Elise. Thank you for joining me for episode 153. Unrest in the world equals anxiety. You know what? You can listen to this podcast anywhere you love listening to your favorite podcast. Learn a little bit about me at wideopenspaceswithelise.com. Elise is spelled Ilise. Now let's pop in our earbuds and let's listen and evolve together. There's a darkness in the air. The dark clouds are beginning to form overhead. You can feel that rain is about to come. You can almost smell it. There's rumbling in the clouds. And now you sense that a storm is coming. How do you protect yourself from that storm? Well, I use this metaphor because there's so much going on in this world, this unrest in the world, that it's creating a storm that each of us is learning how to adapt, dodge, deal with, work through, move around, try not to deal with, try to ignore. But things are coming to a head. And I think it's going to be hard for a lot of us to ignore. This unrest, I will not talk about what my personal views are, what my political views are. That is not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about how do we cope when the world around us seems to be falling apart, or is chaotic, or is volatile, or uncertain. We have wars going on all over the world, in Ukraine and the Middle East. We have wars going on right here in the United States on our college campuses and around the world. There's protests going on everywhere. Racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all these things are rising. And there will be studies, and there are sociologists and historians who are all studying this. And we're going to leave that to them. But I want to talk about you, my listener. How do you deal with the world being unsettled, not being able to depend on it? We all try to keep ourselves in our safety bubbles, but those pins are coming and they're going to pop your bubble. No matter how much you try, it's inevitable because this unrest is seeping into everyday life. I mean, for me personally, I have 2 kids in college. I've got one kid who is in the middle of finals and has to go the long way to go around the protesters just because she needs to get from point A to point B without being disrupted. In the middle of the night, she's hearing chanting and sirens when she should be sleeping. Now, I believe in protesting. I have protested myself. I have marched myself. I am not against that. Listen, I'm a podcaster, so obviously I believe in free speech. But this free speech, as it happens, starts to weave itself into your everyday world. Like my one college student who's finding it difficult to sleep, which then trickles down the lack of sleep into everything else that happens in her life. I also have another college student, and for them to see the college campuses with not the peaceful, loving environment that they're used to, and having to cope with that being a student and being away from home. So for me, there's a personal hit home, immediate. And that might not be that way for all of you. Now, there are so many ways that anxiety presents itself. And each of you are individuals and you know your signs of anxiety. For me, I start to talk fast when I'm really anxious. I kind of get a lump in my throat. I have that weird feeling in my chest that like doom is happening. We all experience anxiety in different ways, and we must become aware in this environment how to notice it and to deal with it so that it doesn't build up and so that this unrest infiltrates itself but then hinders us from living our everyday lives. Remember that storm that I said was coming? Well, when storms start to happen, people experience migraines. If they have arthritis, they feel aches and pains in their joints. Some people can feel a little nauseous. That's the storm that's coming, the physical symptoms that come from a storm that's brewing in the atmosphere. Well, the same type of thing can happen when a storm is brewing in our atmosphere, in our daily lives. Now, I've been lamenting and thinking about this a lot. And I used to find it so easy. I would sit in my therapy groups with about 15 to 20 clients. And there would always be one client who would say, I'm depressed, I feel sad, and I would talk about what they do on a daily basis. And a lot of times is watching TV. And we do that when we're feeling tired and depressed and sad. We kind of stay in our little world, and a lot of people tend to watch TV. Well, what's on TV a lot? The news. So when I was in these therapy groups with my clients years ago, I used to say, turn off the news. You have a flip switch on your remote. Hit power off. Change the channel. Walk away from the TV. It was simplistic as that. A little self-control, obviously, because the news can be addictive. But the news always has good and bad. And when you're having anxiety or feeling depressed or just feeling uneasy and things aren't feeling right emotionally and physically with you, watching that negative information that's fed through the news can only add and exacerbate those symptoms. So it was very easy for me to say that to them. Well, I really can't sit in a group therapy today with clients and say, turn the power off the TV. Yes, they can do that. How about turn the power off your computer, your iPad, your smartphone? Not so easy, right? Well, one, we work on our computers. Our iPhones, our smartphones are a touchstone to the world, to our family, to our friends. iPads, same as computers. What happens is, those ads, those clickbaits, you see something, you want to click on it. You have that urge to click on it. On your social media, on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and Threads, and Facebook. Things scroll by and catch your attention. The clickbait for you to click on it. Don't click on it. It's very important that we limit as much as we can without being unknowledgeable of what's going on in the world. It's a hard balance, I find, because I'm a news junkie. And so I've always been this person who says, oh my God, if you don't keep up with the world news and current events, you're not in tune with what's going on. You're so focused in this you have this tunnel vision in your world and you don't know what's going on in the rest of the world. And so I've always been somebody who's wanted to be in touch. But things seem to be crumbling around us. I mean, if you live in the United States, between the college protests and all the friggin' politics that's going on with elections, and it makes me want to vomit, we're bombarded with this crap. Every day on our social media, I get text messages from political groups. I can't even escape it through text messages. The emails are insane, no matter how much I block them. Whatever I'm registered as, they've got my number and they're sending me all kinds of shit. So they're infiltrating my world without my permission. It's uncontrollable. I don't need to tap on that clickbait, but I can't stop the text message because as soon as I block it, delete it as trash, some other text message pops up. And yes, I want to be knowledgeable when I choose to look for the information. Nowadays, they're shoving the shit down our throats and they're not giving us many options. And so what do? How do we survive this unrest and this negative information overload? And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't freaking know, because I'm a work in progress just like you are. And I'm experiencing this new unrest just like you are. I mean, I was born in the late 60s and I wasn't old enough to witness all of that hippie unrest with the Vietnam War and etc. And yes, I've witnessed things, but nothing like this. Nothing like this where people are being stopped from living their daily lives. People are watching innocent people losing their lives. And so the dilemma is, what do you do and what do I do to get through it? And I really don't know. I'm kind of going trial and error and seeing what works for me. And I will share some of those things and they may work for you and they may not. But shit, we all got to do something. I mean, it's just, you can't avoid it. It doesn't matter. In school, your kids are hearing it be talked about. I hear people, I'm sitting on a train and I hear people talking about these things. It just infiltrates everywhere. Hostages, innocent people being bombed. I mean, for me, when you take out the politics, I just see unrest. And I just see horror and things that scare me. And I can limit my news, and I've done a really good job at that. But I can't eliminate what scrolls past my eyes. And even though I may not click that clickbait, the message is already sent to me. The words that I read in the title are already there. And let me tell you something. I want you to be wise as you absorb the information. There is a lot of propaganda out there on both sides. Both sides of politics, both sides of the wars, both sides of different things that are happening in your community, in your school boards. And in that, there's a lot of propaganda that's being put out there. False, untrue, nasty, defamation, rude comments and articles and ads that are out there. So in trying to cope with this unrest in the world, be smart. Research. If you see some article that just kind of like draws you in, research it and make sure it's factual. Don't take in the non-factual. They're preying on you, hoping you will absorb this. There are people who thrive and live for this unrest. They love seeing the degradation of cities and towns and college campuses. They love seeing flags being waved everywhere, whether they're on the right, wrong, middle, indifferent. So be a smart absorber of information. Keep in mind that a lot of it is propaganda, that a lot of it is false. And do your own research when you're absorbing something that you feel like you might believe or you can stand behind. Make sure it is factual. I wish I had a magic potion that I could take and I could give you. That would make it all go away. That would make things calm. But that's not reality, right? People always have opposing sides, and there's always some kind of war going on. So, besides making sure the information you're taking in is factual, staying away from that clickbait, limiting your time on platforms and watching the news. A lot of times, a great way to decrease our anxiety is to have that verbal diarrhea, to get it all out, right? But you've got to get it all out with people who care about you. And so maybe sitting with friends and talk about what's going on and getting that out, just letting it flow out. It reminds me of Olivia Rodrigo, her Guts tour, and the picture of all the symbols coming out of her mouth. All these different words and thoughts and feelings. And that you can do with people in your world that are safe. I just did this recently. I was out going on a girls' night to some reality show thing, and I was with two friends, and we were talking about things that were going on, and because all of our kids are on college campuses. And it felt so good to talk to other moms, hear what's happening on their kids' campuses, how are their kids coping. Things are different on each campus, so it's interesting to hear those perspectives. And it felt so good. There was a camaraderie, there was a support of being with these moms and talking about something that we're all going through. We may see it differently, but being able to talk about it. There's something I've really learned over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Don't end relationships over which side you are on issues. It's just not worth it, and life is too short. And that's something that I've really learned, that I won't allow any of what's going on to affect my relationships with family and friends and acquaintances. I've also learned that as I've gotten older, I can have views that come from different political parties. I don't have to believe everything that one party says and not the other. I can take different parts from different beliefs and create my own identity of what I believe. You don't have to be all the way to the left or all the way to the right. You can be somewhere in the middle. And in this country, especially the United States, it's almost like we're forced to pick a side. Why? And yes, you will vote for one candidate or another, but let it be based on what you believe and your core values and who you feel represents that the most. You may believe things that both candidates are about, and you just have to make a choice. Don't let this unrest of politics affect your world. Take the information in and utilize it properly. Identify it with the way you choose, you feel comfortable. don't take on the pressures that everybody tries to place on us. Now, how do you separate yourself from all of this? How do you cope with unrest? Is my question to you. How do you cope with disorganization? Not feeling comfortable walking down your street? Not being able to truly be who you are and express who you are out of fear that someone may say or do something to you based on your race or your religion or your beliefs. I mean, there's always been this premise of those things, but it is at a different level. Today, on May Day, May 1st, 2024, things are just spinning out of control. And what can you do about it? For me, I can suggest separating yourself from it. No, I know. You need to walk down the street to get to your home where you might feel uncomfortable. What I mean is invest in yourself and invest in time. Find a quiet, tranquil place. Make that time each day to have sensory deprivation from all this shit that's going on in the world. And the only way you can have that sensory deprivation from the unrest is to find a place that represents peace, where all those words that are coming out of people's mouths and feelings and expressions, well, you have a barrier around you and they can't get to you in this time. So how do you cope with the world's unrest? Find that place, that quiet place, with minimal stimulus other than possibly nature or the sounds or the feelings in the room and the place you choose around you. No computers, no phones, no iPads, no television. And no earbuds if you're going to have commercial breaks, because that's going to disrupt and let the unrest come into this safe space for you. So are you willing to identify a safe space every day that you can spend, let's say, 20 minutes in? Imagine yourself sitting in that bubble that we talked about. And that bubble is now your safe space, wherever it is, protecting you from all that unrest, giving the brain and the body a release of the anxiety, a separation for a short amount of time. Because what happens if we don't? We begin to break down. We start to have emotional things going on, mental health issues, physical issues, heart palpitations, blood pressure rising. If you are addicted to things, you are delving into that more because of the unrest and the anxiety and the uneasiness of our environment. And so you've got to create some type of safe space. I know that I've been working on that on a daily basis. And I know our smartphones have become another organ on our bodies. Let's be real. An organ that goes with us every frickin' place we go, right? Now, what would happen if you shut it off, put it on silent, didn't pick it up, put it away somewhere for 20 minutes? You're going to begin to shake. Your anxiety is with my phone. I need to have my phone near me. Think about that. This has become an appendage on our bodies. And it's kind of sick when you think about it. So I want you in those 20 minutes in your safe bubble, your safe space, to not bring your phone. Let it be somewhere else that you can get to when you need to. but for 20 minutes. Nobody needs to talk to you. Your eyes don't need to see the clickbait and the propaganda and your Facebook friends' posts and Instagram and TikTok videos or word puzzle games. No, it goes away for those 20 minutes. I want you to take that organ and that appendage and put it somewhere else. Because guess what? There are organs in our body like your gallbladder, your appendix, your liver regenerates, organs we don't need. We don't need our smartphones. They've just become part of us for the way the world is. So if you take that out, like that appendix, guess what? You still survive. You still live a healthy life. So make it a goal of yours to keep that smartphone out of your bubble for 20 minutes. Like I said, I'm a work in progress, and I'm doing and trying to figure out how to deal with all this because it's really gotten bad in the past week. It's just a lot. And another thing that I could suggest, it's not something that I've done, but there are groups that have things in common that you can go to and join those groups and be with like-minded people so that you can talk about things that are going on in yourself and your world and how it makes you feel. I think the key to coping with the unrest in the world is we can't avoid it. We've got to be somewhat knowledgeable about it, but we don't have to absorb it 24/7. We have a power over that. I mean, the media and ads and all these different companies think and have been successful in absorbing us and taking us over with their information and almost making us feel like we have no control of it over it, but we actually do. We can limit that information. We can choose what we decide to read and see, and we can take it away from us. We can take it out of the room away from us, out of our vision, out of our sight, out of our sound and hearing. So we do have control. We just have to take it back in our lives. Take back the control that these different voices have tried to control us with. Now, I'm not saying live without your TikTok. I love my Instagram, my Facebook, and there's a time for that during the day. And there's also a time to seclude yourself from it, to take a break from it. We all take food in to nourish ourselves. Well, think about taking this appendage away from you for 20 minutes to nourish yourself. Now, there are more proactive ways to feel like you're in control of this unrest in the world. There is marching and there is protesting and there is a freedom of speech. And shit, I've marched myself. When there was a mass shooting at the local high school where I live, I marched on Washington. I went to a news venue that had a national news source doing a community discussion. I've gone to different forums in different places to feel like and to be proactive in something that I believe in. And I think we should all, if we have that nature, to want to stand up for what we believe in, we should. Part of that is dealing with the unrest. There's the quiet time, there's the solitude and eliminating and taking a break from it. But also to feel in control, we have to take an active part if we're feeling that it's really affecting us, like I did when there was the mass shooting at my local high school and making my town feel so unsafe, and that the walls of my home were my only safe place. And how did I cope with that? By using my freedom of speech. Now, there's a difference between using your freedom of speech and using it in a negative way and creating animosity and anger and riots and fights and making people feel uncomfortable. Stay in your zone, people. Express yourself. Empower yourself. But stay in your own frickin' zone. Believe what you want to believe. Don't hurt people. Don't keep people and make human chains to prevent people from going places that they need to go. Look at yourselves. You have a message, but how are you getting your message out? And I guarantee that if you get it out in a way that people hear you productively, you will feel empowered. You will feel like you are taking control of the unrest in your world, but creating more unrest by trying to get your point across. Where's that getting you? It's a question, and I don't have the answer for it. I don't participate in that. I participate in free speech and lawful protests and marching and not being disruptive and not breaking laws. Think before you act. Think, is this action going to help me deal with the unrest, or am I contributing to it? How is that going to get my goal accomplished? And I don't have the answers for you. I'm throwing things out. I'm seeing things. I'm witnessing things at 1 o'clock in the morning in New York City last night. And I just am at a loss. And I wanted to come on here today because I'm going through it with you and learning and growing and taking backward steps and forward steps and just trying to figure it out. And so I know a lot of you are trying to figure it out too, because you're here and this is a self-improvement, motivational, self-help, mental health podcast. So I know this stuff's got to be affecting you no matter where you are in the world. The protests aren't just here in the United States. They're everywhere. War is in other parts of the world, and yet it's still going to be affecting you in your country or your family. And so there is no way to avoid it. Even if it's subliminally, you may not even realize it. You are being affected by the unrest in the world. Your body is taking it in. You may not be an active participator, an active reader, an active follower, an active news watcher, but there are things around you that you are exposed to that you don't even realize, that are subliminal, that are affecting you emotionally and physically. So let's try to take some control in our world, our individual worlds with the unrest. Let's try to take and work through that anxiety that it might be causing and how to cope in a healthy way. So how do you deal with the unrest in the world? Now, if I were to close my eyes right now after saying that question, I could see the little thought bubbles above your head. How do you cope with the unrest in the world? And how does it equal anxiety for you? Those thought bubbles are floating up there. I want you to grab one, and I want you to start to work on how you cope with that. That particular thing, that bubble, that vision that's above your head. Pop it and start working on it. You can sit back and you can do nothing, and that's your choice. But I can't sit back and do nothing. And part of my part, well, I guess, is this podcast. Because we're all going through the shit and we're all trying to deal with it. And, well, I'm going through it with you. If you've got any ideas on how to cope with this unrest in the world, please send me comments. You can comment on this podcast wherever you listen to it. You can go to my website and make comments and reach out to me. You can go to my Instagram and my Facebook and my TikTok and do that as well and reach out to me. Tell me how the unrest in the world has been affecting you. Keeping it free from politics and opinions on what the situations are. I don't care which side you're on when it comes to your anxiety and your physical and mental health. I don't care where you lie and what your opinions are. I just want to know how you're dealing with it, how you're coping with it. Because I would love to have some new ideas for myself that I can utilize and that I can give out to my audience, because we're always learning and evolving, listening and evolving together. So please, if you've got any great advice, send them my way. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Let's take a deep sigh together. Remember, positive thoughts always create positive energy. Go out and explore all those wide open spaces in your world and just breathe. Take it in. Take in the healthy stuff. Thanks for listening to me, the fiery redhead at Wide Open Spaces with Elise. And until next time, my friends, ciao.